A Donald Trump win has sparked a wild ride for the share market. The US futures market plunged 5% yesterday afternoon before recovering after Donald Trump's conciliatory victory speech. But what a difference a day in politics makes, with the big miners have led a $45 billion upswing for Australian shares as investors pin their hopes on a pro-business Trump White House. BHP surged more than 9%, followed by Rio and Fortescue, the ASX 200 finishing the day up almost 3.5%. There was a similar bounce across the region, and the Aussie dollar is currently buying above 76.5 US cents. Well, our reporter Carrington Clarke has been watching today's big bounce on the screens at the ASX, and he joins me now. Carrington, what has been driving this huge comeback?
Well, good afternoon to you, Tiki. And as you say, what a difference a day makes. Let's first have a look at how the chart finished, because what is most interesting about today is how little volatility there actually was. Yesterday's chart was all over the place, but what we saw this morning was a big jump at the get-go, and we've basically held that into the finish. There's actually a little bit of momentum as we finish the market. And as you've already pointed out, driven in large part by what we saw through the miners. BHP, an outperformer today. We saw a big bounce on iron ore prices yesterday.
Yeah, BHP on an absolute tear.
On an absolute tear, Tiki. That's exactly right. I mean, and you've mentioned Fortescue as well. They've really driven the market higher. People seem to be betting on whatever doubts there were about whether or not Trump would push for a trade war with China maybe have been overblown, and it seems the miners are feeling all sorts of love at the moment. They've done particularly well, and that's what's really driven us up higher.
All right, it wasn't all positive, I guess. Gold glittered yesterday, looking a bit tarnished today?
Looking very tarnished today. We're looking here at the positive sides, but when it flips over to the red, you're going to see that it's basically the exact reversal, Tiki, of what we saw yesterday. Yesterday, we were seeing double-digit gains for a lot of the big-name gold miners within Australia. That was because we saw the gold price actually jump about 4%. But to give you an idea of how much the pessimism gave away to optimism overnight in trade, we saw gold up at prices of about $1,335 an ounce. It dropped down to as low as $1,270. It's bounced back a little bit today, and this has been the effect in the gold prices throughout. Regis, Santa Barbara, Saracen, Evolution, those that were leading the trade yesterday have today felt the pain, and as you point out, a much more tarnished story for gold. I will also give you a little anecdote from yesterday. While we were here in the stock market, we were told one of the gold sellers within this region actually ran out as people desperately tried to grab on to that safe haven asset. But when the risk moved and people decided it was a risk-on environment once again, we've seen that completely flip.
Wow. Now, global currency markets are obviously particularly volatile yesterday, but the Australian dollar once again feeling the love.
Absolutely, Tiki. We'll bring it down to where the currencies are. Australia did feel some of the pain yesterday. We're generally seen as a risk-on currency, so when people were feeling pessimistic, the Australian dollar fell. It has gained some strength today, but perhaps the biggest story was what happened on Japanese currencies. We saw the yen soar, in fact, so much so that the Japanese ministry actually suggested they may need to interfere. Well, those fears were overblown today. The Nikkei up about 7%. If you thought our performance of over 3% was strong, you should see what happened in Japan. Their currency fell. That's created a situation where the Japanese government seems to be suggesting, at least for now, they can sit on their hands and we won't see a currency war erupt between the Japanese and American authorities.
Gosh, money lost and made and lost and made. Carrington Clarke, thank you very much for all that.